It was a quiet morning in early autumn. The kind of morning Daniel Sheppard usually enjoyed. The streets were calm, the air was cool, and the city felt just distant enough to leave him alone with his thoughts. But today, something was different. All right, just another day, nothing special. Just get to work, Daniel. Smile. Another meeting with that annoying customer with a new set demands, I'm sure. He cycled the same route he always took. Past the terraced houses, past the old bus stop, past the tree that never seemed to lose its leaves. Routine. Predictable. Comforting. A sudden sharp signal from his phone woke him up from his thoughts. Huh? A message? Probably spam. Or Mum reminding me about Sunday. But it wasn't spam. And it wasn't his mother. This is your only warning. What the hell? No sender, no number, nothing. Okay, calm down. It's probably a joke. Someone messing around. But the feeling in his chest told him otherwise. A quiet pressure, a tightening, as if the morning itself had shifted. What is this? Who sent it? Why me? What am I supposed to do with this? Just ignore it, keep going, pretend it never happened. But he couldn't ignore it. Not really. Because a few seconds later, the second message arrived. The second message appeared without sound, without vibration, without anything that should have alerted him. It was simply there. Another one. Turn right. Turn right. Right where? I'm not even at a junction yet. But he was. Just a few meters ahead, the road split. Left toward the city, his usual route. Predictable. Safe. Right. A quieter street he had never taken. A street that led away from everything familiar. Okay, this is stupid. I'm not doing this. I'm not. Why am I slowing down? No, Daniel, don't be an idiot. But curiosity has a strange gravity. And fear has an even stronger pull. Just look down the road, that's all. It's empty. Completely empty. Why would someone tell me to go there? He waited, half balanced on the pedals, half ready to flee, half ready to obey. Then the third message arrived. You're being watched. What? No. Okay, think. Who? Where? Just look around. Slowly. He turned his head. Left. Right. Behind him. Nothing. No cars, no pedestrians, no open windows. Just the quiet hum of a city not yet awake. This isn't funny. All right. I'm going back. I'm going to work. I'm ignoring this. Why isn't it going away? The phone screen stayed lit, as if was waiting or listening. Fine. I'll go right. Just to prove there's nothing there. Just a quick look. Then I'm done with this. He turned the handlebars, slowly, reluctantly. The bicycle rolled forward, tires whispering against the pavement, down the unfamiliar road, into the quiet. Okay, I'm here. Happy now? Nothing. Just houses, trees, a cat staring at me like I owe it money. But then the fourth message appeared. Short, precise, impossible to ignore. Stop. Stop what? Stop here? Stop moving? Stop breathing? All right, I'm stopped. Now what? For a moment, nothing happened. Then a sound. Soft, barely audible, like a footstep on gravel. Hello? Is someone there? This is ridiculous. I'm talking to a hedge. But he wasn't. Because the hedge moved. What the? No, it's just the wind. Just the... Okay, that's not the wind. A figure stepped out. Not quickly, not threateningly, just present. A man, tall, wearing a dark coat, face obscured by the low morning light. Who are you? Did you send these messages? Say something. The man didn't speak. Instead, he raised a hand, slowly, deliberately, and pointed at Daniel's phone. What do you want me to... Another message? Don't trust him. What? The man took a single step forward, and Daniel realized something. Something simple. Something terrifying. There were 2 warnings now, and they contradicted each other. Okay, this is bad. This is really bad. Who do I trust? The phone? This guy? Neither? I need to leave. Oh God! Because the man wasn't alone. Another figure appeared behind him, then another, and another. Silent. Still. Watching. Nope. I'm done. I'm leaving. I'm leaving right now. He turned the bike, pushed off, pedaled hard, but the phone buzzed again. Don't run. No. And that was how Daniel Sheppard's ordinary morning ended. Not with a choice, not with understanding, but with a warning, and the promise of many more to come. He stopped after a few hundred meters, trying to get a grasp of things. Before this morning, Daniel Sheppard's life had been ordinary. Not dull, not unhappy, just steady. He grew up in a small village outside London, a place where everyone knew everyone, and where the loudest sound after 9 in the evening was the neighbour's dog dreaming in its sleep. He moved to the city at 22, not so much because he wanted adventure, but because he wanted distance. Distance from expectations, from the quiet, from the version of himself he thought he was supposed to be. Mum still thinks I'll move back one day. Just a phase, she says. London's too fast for you. Maybe she's right. He worked an office job he didn't hate, lived in a flat he didn't love, and cycled the same route every morning because it made him feel like he had control over something. Routine was his anchor. Predictability, his comfort. I like knowing where I'm going, what's waiting for me, what the day will look like. Or, I liked it. He wasn't the kind of man who sought out danger, or mystery, or anything that might disrupt the fragile balance he'd built. Which made this morning all the more unsettling. I mean, why me? I'm not special. I'm not important. I'm just... me. He thought about turning back, about calling someone, about pretending none of this was happening. But the road behind him felt just as uncertain as the one ahead. I should call someone, tell them what's going on. But what would I even say? Hi, Mum. Someone's sending me creepy messages, and a group of strangers just stepped out of a hedge. Or even worse, call my boss who's currently preparing the meeting. Yeah, that'll go well. He wasn't close to many people. Not anymore. Friends drifted, Work colleagues stayed colleagues, and the last person he'd truly opened up to had left without much of a goodbye. Loneliness wasn't new to him, but this was different. I don't want to deal with this alone. But who else is there? The figures behind him hadn't moved. Not a step. Not a sound. They simply watched, as if waiting for him to make the next move. Okay, Daniel, think. You've handled worse. Well, no, you haven't. But you're still here, right? He tightened his grip on the handlebars. The metal felt cold, unfamiliar. And for the first time that morning, he realized something important. He wasn't afraid of the men behind him. Not really. He was afraid of what the messages meant. Don't trust him, it said. Who? The man in the coat? The people behind him? Or someone else? The phone buzzed again. A single word. A command. Move. Move where? Left? Right? Forward? Just tell me what you want. But the phone stayed silent, and the figures stayed still. And the morning, once calm and predictable, now felt like the beginning of something he wasn't prepared for. I can't stay here. I need answers, and I'm not getting them standing in the middle of the road. So he chose a direction. Not left, not back, not toward safety. He chose forward, into the unknown. All right, let's see where this goes. And please don't let me regret this. And with that, Daniel Sheppard pedaled into the quiet street ahead, unaware that this was the moment his life split in two. The life he knew, and the life waiting for him. I don't remember cycling home. I just remember the silence, and the way the figures didn't move, like they weren't people, just placeholders. He didn't sleep that night. Not really. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for another message. None came. Until morning. Did you forget already? No sender, no timestamp, just those 4 words. Forget what? He checked his phone history. No record of the previous messages. No trace of the warning. No sign of the figures. It was as if the day before had been edited. Okay. Let's see what else is here. Missed calls. 6, all from Mark. Great. Text messages too. I really need some coffee. Mark was his manager. Not the friendly kind. The kind who measured worth in punctuality and client satisfaction. And Daniel had missed a very important meeting. Before he opened the messages, Daniel paused. His head was foggy, his stomach hollow. And whatever had happened yesterday, it hadn't come with breakfast. He walked into the kitchen, the floor cold beneath his feet, the air still heavy with sleep. The kettle was where he'd left it. The mug, too. Some things, at least, hadn't changed. He filled the kettle, pressed the button, waited. The hum of the water heating was the first normal sound he'd heard all morning. He poured the coffee, black, no sugar, held the mug in both hands and let the warmth settle into his fingers. Then he sat down, phone in one hand, mug in the other. And finally, he opened the first message from Mark. Where the hell are you? You were supposed to be here at 9. Client's furious. Call me now. Okay. I didn't even know I missed it. Then he saw the voicemail. 1 minute 20 seconds. He hesitated, then pressed play.
Daniel, this is unacceptable. You had one job today. One! The client waited 20 minutes before walking out. I don't care what's going on. You call me back the moment you hear this. Do you understand? I need to know where you are, and I need to know it now.
I don't remember any of this. I don't remember the morning. I don't remember deciding not to go. I just remember the message. He stared at the phone, at the missed calls, at the angry texts, at the voicemail still echoing in his ears. And then the screen lit up again. Another message? Some warnings don't end. They repeat. What does that mean? Daniel Sheppard was beginning to realize something. This wasn't just about yesterday. It wasn't just about a missed meeting. It was about something deeper, something older, something that had been echoing for a long time. I need to call Mark back. Just explain something, anything. But what do I even say? He opened the call log. His thumb hovered over Mark's name. Then he stopped, because something else caught his eye. Wait, what's this? A message from unknown. When you call him, he won't believe you. Oh, come on. He stared at the message, at the words that felt less like a warning and more like a prediction. A prediction he didn't want to test. No, I'm not doing this again. I'm calling him. He pressed the button. The phone rang once. Twice. Then,
Daniel? Finally, where have you been? No, don't answer that. Just tell me you're coming in.
Mark, I don't know what happened yesterday. I think something...
Daniel, stop. Whatever excuse you're about to give me, I've already heard it from someone else. You weren't sick. You weren't stuck in traffic. You were seen.
Seen? Seen where?
Near Oak Ridge Lane, just standing there, middle of the road. Staring at nothing, apparently.
Oak Ridge Lane? That's where the figures were. His pulse quickened. Someone had seen him. Someone had watched him. But not the figures.
Daniel, listen. I don't know what's going on with you, but you need to get your head straight. Come in, now.
The call ended. Daniel sat frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear. Oak Ridge Lane. He hadn't imagined it. He hadn't dreamed it. He had been there. Okay, think. If someone saw me, who? And why didn't they say anything? He stood up, walked to the window, pulled the curtain aside. The street outside was quiet. Normal. Too normal. I should go in. Face Mark. Explain something. But what if the messages start again? As if on cue, the phone buzzed. A single vibration. Sharp. Precise. No, not now. What do you want from me? He lifted the phone. A new message. Don't go to work. Of course. He felt the frustration rise, the fear, the confusion, but beneath it all, something else. A pull. The same pull he felt yesterday. Why? Why shouldn't I go? What's waiting for me there? The phone buzzed again. This time a longer message. Because he's not the one you should be afraid of. Who? Who are you talking about? No reply. Just silence. And the faint hum of the morning outside. I can't keep doing this. I need answers, real answers. And I'm not getting them here. Daniel quickly brushed his teeth and got dressed. He grabbed his jacket, his keys, his bag, and as he stepped toward the door, the phone buzzed one last time. What now? Check the photo. What photo? He opened his gallery, scrolled, stopped. There, between two pictures he didn't remember taking, was a new image, a blurry shot, taken from behind him, of Daniel standing in the middle of Oak Ridge Lane, staring at the figures. And behind him, in the corner of the frame, a face he recognized. A face he hadn't seen in years. No, that's impossible. Why would he be there? And for the first time, Daniel realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about warnings, or messages, or strangers in the road. This was personal, and whoever was sending the messages knew far more about him than he ever imagined. Daniel tried to ignore the strange messages, the photos, the symbols, but the figures kept appearing, closer each time, and the more he looked, the less he trusted his own memories. Daniel hadn't noticed the timing before. 8:17. Every message, every photo, every warning. It was the kind of detail he should have seen earlier, but now it was all he could think about. Morning light crept across the kitchen table as Daniel sat hunched over his phone. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the slow drip of the coffee machine kept him company. Daniel scrolls through the photos again. 8:17. Every single time. Why? He opened the oldest image, Oak Ridge Lane, the same angle, the same grainy texture, and the same two figures standing in the distance. Daniel zooms in. Nothing changes. Nothing ever changes. Daniel sent the photos to the printer, hoping a physical layout would give him a better overview. The machine worked quietly in the next room, feeding out the prints at a steady, mechanical rhythm. He stood by the counter, sipping his coffee, listening to the soft whirring as each page slid out. When the last sheet landed in the tray, he gathered them carefully and carried the stack into the living room. He spread the printed photos across the coffee table. The room felt colder than usual, as if the air itself was waiting for him to understand something. The symbol appeared in every one of them, sometimes faint, hidden in the corner, sometimes bold, almost carved into the image, but always there. Daniel picks up two photos, one recent, one old. It's the same. Exactly the same shot. That's impossible. He walked to the window and looked out. The street was empty, still, as if holding its breath. Eric was the one person Daniel still talked to regularly. A friend from before the move, before Oak Ridge Lane, before the messages. Eric had always been the rational one, the one who told Daniel when he was overthinking, The one who picked up the phone. Except today. Daniel dials. Phone rings. Goes to voicemail.
Hey, it's Eric. Can't pick up right now. Leave a message.
Daniel hesitates.
Hey, it's me. I need to talk to you. It's about the photos. Something's wrong.
He hangs up. Daniel waited for the phone to ring. It didn't. Back at his desk, Daniel opened his computer. The screen flickered once before settling into a dull glow. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, only that he had missed something. A folder catches his eye. Oakridge_archive. He didn't remember creating it. But the name, the structure, it looked like something he would have done. He opens it. 17 photos, all taken at 8:17. All showing Oak Ridge Lane. All showing the figures. But the oldest ones were dated years before Daniel moved to the city.
No, that can't be right.
A sharp pain pulsed behind Daniel's eyes. A memory, or something pretending to be one, flashed through his mind. A car, a scream, a hand pressed against a window, then darkness. Daniel grips the edge of the desk.
Oh, that didn't happen. That's not mine.
The house felt colder now, as if something outside had shifted. Daniel walks to the window. At first, nothing. Then, 2 figures, standing exactly where the photos showed them. Still, silent, watching. Daniel raises his phone, zooms in. The screen freezes, flickers. 8:17.
No.
Daniel took a picture. The camera shutter echoed through the quiet house. He looks at the new photo. The figures were closer now, much closer. And behind them, a third figure, taller, darker, barely visible. Daniel steps back. His phone vibrates. A new message. No sender. The message was, "You're late." 8:17. Again. Daniel stood frozen in the middle of the living room, the message still glowing on his phone. "You're late." The words pulsed in his mind, steady and cold, as if they carried a meaning he wasn't ready to understand. He lowered the phone slowly. The house felt different now. He could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock, the distant hum of the refrigerator, and beneath it all, something else. A soft vibration, a low, almost inaudible resonance, like the house itself was holding its breath. Daniel swallowed hard. He dialed Eric again. The call rang once, twice, 3 times. Then the familiar click of voicemail.
Hey, it's Eric. Can't pick up right now. Leave a message.
Daniel closes his eyes.
Eric, please call me back. Something's happening. I don't know what to do.
He ends the call. The vibration in the house grew stronger. Not loud, not obvious, but present. Daniel turned toward the hallway, suddenly aware of how dark it was. The light from the living room didn't reach far. The shadows seemed thicker than they should be. He took a step forward. The floor creaked, which it had never done before. He wasn't sure why he was walking toward the hallway, only that something was pulling him there. A memory, a feeling, a pressure behind his eyes. Daniel reached the doorway. The hallway was silent. Too silent. He flicked the light switch. Nothing happened. The bulb didn't even try to turn on. No flicker, no hum. Just darkness. Daniel stepped back.
No, not now.
He tried the switch again. Still nothing. A cold draft brushed past him, moving from the hallway toward the living room. It carried a faint scent. Damp earth, old wood, something metallic. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He turned toward the window. The street outside was empty. At least, he thought it was. He lifted his phone and zoomed in on the spot where the figures had stood. Nothing. Just the quiet street, washed in pale evening light. Daniel exhaled shakily. Then his phone buzzed. A new message. No sender. His hands trembled as he opened it. On the screen it said, "Look again." Daniel's heart pounded. He raised the phone toward the window once more, zoomed in. At first he saw nothing. Then the image sharpened. And there they were. Not 2, not 3. 4 figures now, standing perfectly still, perfectly aligned, facing the house. Daniel stumbled backward. His phone vibrated again. Another message. Short, simple, a single word. Soon. Daniel's breath shook. He didn't know if he should run, hide, or scream. But he knew one thing. He wasn't alone. Daniel knows something is slipping out of his control. The hours he loses, the moments he can't explain, they're starting to add up. And today, the gaps in his reality won't stay hidden. Morning arrived, strangely. The kitchen was washed in a pale, colorless light, a light that didn't warm anything. Not the room, not the air, not Daniel. He sat at the table, hunched over a mug of coffee. The steam had already faded. The surface was still. He lifted the cup, took a sip. It was lukewarm.
I woke up at 7. I'm sure I did. Where did the morning go?
The refrigerator hummed. Not steadily, not normally, but in uneven pulses, like a heartbeat trying to find its rhythm. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. He needed proof. Something real, something he could hold on to. So he set up his phone on a small tripod in the living room, pressed record.
Test. Documenting the day. No gaps. No missing time.
He walked around the room, describing everything he did, every movement, every sound. Then he stopped the recording and pressed play. His own voice filled the room. Until it didn't. A perfect jump. A clean cut. No glitch. No distortion. From 10:51 to 11:05. As if those 14 minutes had never existed.
No, I was right here. I was right here.
He stared at the phone. The missing minutes were gone, cleanly erased. He opened the call log. Empty. Except for one entry. A call placed at 3:14. To Eric. Daniel swallowed. Pressed play. First, static noise. A pulsating, clicking sound, like a telegraph from another time. Then, a voice. His own, but distorted, distant, like it came from another version of himself.
There, inside, the walls.
Daniel froze. He could hear his own breathing in the recording, paced, panicking. Then, a deep, resonant breath. Not human, not close, but directed at the microphone.
That wasn't me.
The recording ended. A sharp click. Then silence. Daniel's hand trembled. For the first time, he wondered if the missing hours were not empty at all. but full of something he wasn't meant to remember. A knock at the door. Sharp, urgent. Daniel froze, then opened it. Outside the door was Eric, with a concerned expression on his face.
There you are. You called me last night. No, I didn't. You did. You sounded
Eric is scanning Daniel's face.
not like you. You said they were inside the walls. Then the line went dead.
Daniel's stomach twisted. He didn't remember calling. He didn't remember anything. And that was the problem. They stepped outside, just for air, just for a moment. The frost on the pavement glittered in the weak daylight. Daniel stopped, stared.
No. No, no, no.
There it was, the symbol, perfectly formed in the frost, not drawn, not carved, as if the frost itself had avoided the shape.
What is it, Daniel? You don't see that. See what?
Daniel stepped back. The world tilted. Just slightly. Just enough. Back inside, the house felt wrong. Tilted. Shifted. Daniel walked into his bedroom. The bed was unmade, but he remembered making it. His shoes were by the door, covered in dried mud, but he didn't remember going outside. And on the nightstand, a note, in his handwriting.
Don't look at the clock.
He looked anyway. The clock read 8:17.
Not again.
A vibration rolled through the house, low, subtle, like a breath held too long. Daniel felt pressure behind his eyes, a tug, a pull. He walked toward the hallway, slowly, mechanically.
Daniel? Daniel!
I have to see.
Daniel didn't remember walking back into the living room, but suddenly he was there, standing in the middle of the floor, breathing hard. The vibration in the house faded, then returned, then faded again, like a heartbeat, but not his. He checked his phone. 11:12. He blinked. 11:12. He blinked again. 11:12.
No, that's not.
He walked to the window, slowly, carefully. Outside, a car drove past. A red one. Old. Rust on the door. It turned the corner and disappeared. Daniel exhaled, then froze. Because the same red car turned the same corner again. Same speed, same angle, same rust.
No.
He stepped back from the window. His breath fogged the glass. Behind him, Eric's voice sounded distant, muffled, like he was speaking through water.
Daniel, what are you doing?
Daniel didn't answer. Because the red car turned the corner a third time, perfectly identical. A loop. A glitch. A warning. He opened the front door, and the world outside was wrong. The light was too bright, the street too long, the houses too flat, like painted scenery.
Daniel, look at me. What do you see? No, not this.
His phone vibrated. Once. Twice. 3 times. A message appeared on the screen. You're drifting. Don't fight it. Follow. Daniel took a step forward. Eric instinctively reached out and grabbed his arm.
Daniel, stay with me.
Daniel blinked, as if waking from a dream he didn't remember falling into. They walked back inside again. The air felt heavier now, denser. Daniel heard a strange sound coming from a door at the back of the house, the door to the laundry room. A faint knocking came from inside, rhythmic, measured.
Daniel, don't think you should open that.
He opened it anyway. Darkness, thick, total. A faint glow in the corner. A clock, old, analog, spinning wildly, then stopping. 8:17.
Where did that clock come from? And why is it always that time?
The glass cracked. Once, twice. A spider web of fractures. Daniel stumbled back. Eric grabbed him and pulled him out of the laundry room with all the strength he could muster. The door slammed shut behind them as they hit the floor. Back inside, the vibrations stopped. Instantly. Like someone had flipped a switch. Daniel looked at the clock on the wall. 8:17. Eric checked his phone. 14:52.
I'm not supposed to be here.
Daniel walked to the mirror in the hallway. Slowly, carefully. His reflection lagged, half a second behind. Then, for a single impossible moment, the figurers stood behind him. Still, silent, waiting. He blinked. They were gone. His phone vibrated. New message. Soon. And Daniel Sheppard realized that whatever was happening to him wasn't slowing down. It was accelerating. Night settled over the house like a heavy blanket. Thick. Suffocating. Daniel stood in the hallway, still staring at the mirror long after the figures had vanished. Eric hovered behind him, unsure, concerned, afraid to speak. A soft creak echoed from the far end of the hallway, a floorboard shifting under weight. Daniel turned his head, slowly, as if the air itself resisted the movement. The hallway was dark. Too dark. The kind of darkness that swallowed the edges of things.
Daniel, don't go down there.
But Daniel took a step forward, then another. The darkness didn't recede. It thickened, like ink spreading in water. A shape formed in the doorway at the end of the hall. Tall, still, featureless. Not a figure, not exactly. Something else. Something older. Daniel's phone vibrated in his hand. A text message flashed on screen. Not yet. The shape dissolved. The darkness thinned. The hallway returned to normal. Eric exhaled shakily. Daniel didn't. He couldn't. For the first time, Eric saw enough to understand that something was happening here, something he was never meant to witness. Whatever had its focus on Daniel hadn't intended to involve him, and now, by sheer accident, Eric had stepped into a path that was never meant for him. Daniel knew, deep in the part of his mind that still understood fear, that whatever stood in that doorway was waiting for him. Just not tonight. For a couple of minutes they stood there in quiet, Daniel's eyes fixed on the floor. Eric looked at Daniel. Then he turned, slowly, looked at the door where the shadow had disappeared just moments ago. He finally broke the silence.
We need to talk about what just happened. I don't care how strange it sounds. I saw it. I heard it. And I know you've been dealing with this longer than you're telling me.
Eric, it's not that simple.
Then make it simple. Start from the beginning. Has anything like this happened before?
Daniel hesitated, not because he didn't want to answer, but because he didn't know where the beginning was anymore.
There was something on Oak Ridge Lane, the morning this all started. It's a few weeks ago. Or is it days? I'm not sure.
What happened?
I got a message telling me to check my photos.
Daniel unlocked his phone. His hands were steady. Too steady, Eric thought, for someone who had just seen what they'd seen. He opened the gallery, scrolled, stopped.
Here, this one.
Eric leaned in. The image was blurry, taken from behind Daniel, standing in the middle of Oak Ridge Lane, staring at the figures. But in the corner of the frame, a face. A man. Someone Daniel recognized.
Wait, is that Ron?
I haven't seen that man in years. He shouldn't have been there. Looks exactly the same after all this time.
The photo didn't just unsettle Daniel. It stirred something old. Memories he'd pushed aside, details he'd never questioned. And Eric, shaken by what he'd witnessed in the house, wasn't about to let it go. He needed answers. And Daniel needed distance. So they left the house behind and drove toward the one place where the past still had a shape. Daniel's childhood home. Daniel hadn't been here in months, but the house felt exactly the same, as if time had been waiting for him. Evening had turned to night when Eric steered his Mazda up on the driveway of the Sheppard's house. The place was dark, and Daniel's parents were probably already in bed.
Where did you keep your old stuff? School things, photos, anything from back then?
Upstairs, the attic.
They carefully climbed the old creaky stairs to the attic, trying their best not to cause any noise. Daniel reached out, fumbling in the darkness, and found it. The light switch. The solitary bulb spread its dim light, and dust hung like suspended memories in the cold air.
There, that box.
Daniel pulled the box into the light under the bulb. He ripped the old tape, that was dry at this point, and it didn't take much to peel it off. Old notebooks, school drawings, class photos, pieces of a childhood Daniel barely remembered.
Daniel, look at this.
A photo. A schoolyard. Children running. And in the far background, a familiar silhouette.
That's him. Ron. He looks exactly the same.
He shouldn't be in this photo. I must have been 8.
And on the edge of the frame, a clock on the school wall, frozen at 8:17. Something shifted in Daniel. A memory rising, but not from him. A subtle whoosh, a faint echo of children's voices. He saw himself, small, standing outside the kiosk. Ron behind the counter, watching him. Not smiling, not speaking, just watching.
Daniel? Hey, Daniel.
With something best described as a snap, he was back in the present.
I saw something, but it didn't feel like my memory.
What do you mean?
It felt like someone else remembering me.
They heard distant footsteps from downstairs and walked down. A soft sound of a kettle boiling came from the kitchen. Amanda had been awake the whole time, listening, waiting.
You're home late.
We found something in the attic.
He put the photo on the kitchen table. Amanda gave it a brief look, just for a second, but it was enough. A flicker of recognition and fear.
You shouldn't dig too deep into this, Daniel.
Mom, you know something, don't you?
Some things are better left where they belong.
But her voice trembled, just slightly, and that was enough for Eric.
What aren't you telling us?
Not now, please.
Daniel, come, let's take a walk. Clear our heads. Okay.
Amanda watched them leave, something tightening inside her. Quiet, but impossible to ignore. A cold breeze stirred up leaves skittering across the pavement.
I need to see it. The kiosk, where he worked. It's been closed for years. Let's just look.
They approached the old structure that once was the kiosk, a metal shutter rattling in the wind. The kiosk stood exactly where Daniel remembered it. But something was wrong. It looked untouched, preserved, as if time had stopped paying attention.
Look at this, the sign.
Opening hours. But someone had scratched a single number into the metal. 8:17.
This wasn't here before.
A faint creak, like someone shifting inside.
Did you hear that?
Daniel blinked, and for a fraction of a second, Ron stood in the doorway, still, watching, then gone. Back at the house, they laid everything out in the soft light on Daniel's old desk. Every photo, every drawing, every scrap of Daniel's childhood.
He's in all of these. Different years, different places. Same face. Why can't I remember any of this?
It felt wrong, as if someone had slipped Ron into moments Daniel remembered differently. He could picture his father, James, in some of these scenes, yet the photos insisted on another truth. And then, a drawing. Crayon on cheap paper. Daniel's handwriting. Figures, standing in a formation. The same formation from Oak Ridge Lane.
You drew this when you were a kid? I don't remember drawing it.
And carved into the corner of Daniel's old desk, a symbol. A circle, split by a vertical line. Amanda quietly entered the room, pulled out a chair.
Daniel, you need to stop this.
Stop what?
He's been watching you since before you could walk.
Who? Ron?
Please, don't say his name in this house.
Her voice cracked. Not from fear, but from something deeper. Something like grief. The night is quiet. A clock ticking and the low noise of the wind outside is the only sounds Daniel could hear. The clock on the wall clicked steadily 8:16. Tick. 8:17. Everything stops. Silence. A deep, unnatural silence. Something moved in the hallway. Not a figure. Not Ron. Something else. Eric stays the night in the guest room on the bottom floor. He could hear a weird sound from the direction of Daniel's room above and got worried.
Daniel, you okay up there?
Daniel blinked. The shadow was gone. But the clock remained frozen. An 8:17. The clock on the wall still showed 8:17. Not ticking, not broken, just suspended. as if time itself had paused to watch him. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed. Eric stood in the doorway, unsure whether to step inside or back away. Downstairs, a man coughs, a deep, tired sound. Daniel's father, James Sheppard, shifting in his sleep in the parents' bedroom.
Daniel, that wasn't normal. None of this is normal. I know, and it's getting worse.
Eric stepped into the room. For the first time, he saw something in Daniel's face that wasn't just fear. It was pull, as if something unseen had reached out and touched him.
What did you feel when everything stopped? Like something was pulling me, like I was supposed to go somewhere, but I don't know where.
Downstairs it was still. Amanda moved quietly in the kitchen, preparing tea. She stood by the stove. The kettle had stopped boiling, but she hadn't poured the water. She stared into it, as if waiting for an answer she feared. Daniel and Eric entered discreetly. From the bedroom came the faint sound of James talking in his sleep, something about banners and getting the lads organized. He wasn't aware that Daniel had come home, and not that he was about to leave again.
Daniel, you should be asleep.
We need to talk.
Amanda turned slowly. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. A cough from the bedroom, then James's voice, half awake, half dreaming.
If that's Daniel, tell him I'll be up early. Big day tomorrow. The club needs me sharp.
James didn't wait for an answer. He never did, and within seconds he drifted back into sleep. Amanda closed her eyes, just for a moment, as if the weight of two worlds pressed against her chest.
Daniel saw something, and I saw something too.
Amanda opened her eyes. She didn't look toward the bedroom. She didn't need to. James was already gone again, lost in dreams of matches, banners, and debates.
You have to stop digging into this, boys.
It's already too late.
Amanda's eyes flicked, and for a single moment, Daniel saw something in her he had never seen before. Fear. They left the house behind, drove in silence. Neither wanted to speak about 8:17. When they stepped into Daniel's apartment, the air felt different, thicker, as if the room itself had been waiting. Daniel walked a few steps in, stopped.
It's here again.
The lights flickered, not randomly, but rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Then the room split. Two versions of the same space, layered like thin sheets of glass.
No, not again.
In one version stood Ron, perfectly still, as if waiting for a signal. In the other, a silhouette of Amanda. Not the Amanda he knew, something larger, something struggling to hold its shape. Two voices overlapped, coming from different directions in time. First, a voice encouraging and comforting. Don't be afraid. Then another voice, demanding. Choose.
Choose what? Who's talking to me?
And then, silence. The room snapped back into one piece. Eric didn't see what Daniel saw, not the full vision, but he caught something, a disturbance in the air, like heat bending light. It was enough. He insisted they go to his place instead. Daniel looked like he might collapse. It wasn't more than a couple of miles, but Eric drove them there in silence, Daniel staring out the window, as if expecting the world to shift again. They sat on the couch. The quiet felt heavy.
There were 2 versions of the room, and someone told me to choose. I saw something too. One of the figures, just for a second.
Daniel looked up. For the first time, he wasn't alone in this.
So you believe me now? I believe something's happening, and I'm not letting you go through it alone.
Amanda stood alone on an empty parking lot. She had driven here without thinking, as if her body knew where to go before she did. Ron stood 20 meters away, perfectly still, as if he had always been there.
You're too early.
You don't decide that.
He's not ready.
The board has waited long enough. The fracture is opening. You can't stop it.
I can delay it.
Ron smiled, a smile without warmth. Not anymore. Daniel had returned to his apartment. He said he needed to be alone. Eric didn't like it. Not after the things they had witnessed, and Daniel seemed to be deep into something Eric didn't understand. 10 minutes passed before he moved. He couldn't ignore the pull. He went after Daniel. He didn't go inside. Instead, he waited just outside the building, leaning against the railing, watching Daniel's window from below. He didn't know what to do, but he couldn't leave Daniel alone now. Inside, Daniel sat at his computer. The screen flickered, as if something was trying to break through. In the Messenger app, from an unknown sender, a text message appeared. "We see you."
No. Who are you?
Daniel pushed back from the desk, stumbling toward the window. Outside, the figures stood in a perfect formation, all facing him, unmoving, expectant. Daniel's breath caught. His panic broke through whatever held him still. He bolted for the door, down the stairs, out into the cold night air. Eric straightened the moment he heard the footsteps. Daniel burst out of the building, barely aware of where he was running. Eric caught him halfway down the sidewalk.
Daniel, hey, what happened? That man, over there, is that…
Eric tilted his head. Daniel turned. Ron stood farther down the street, perfectly still, like a statue placed there on purpose.
It's him. It's Ron. This isn't just your problem anymore.
Behind them, the figures stood in formation, silent, watching. Amanda sat on the floor of the dimly lit living room, hands in her hair, breathing too fast, whispering to herself. From the bedroom, James snored, deep, rhythmic, unbothered. He had gone to bed early, muttering about early start, big match, banners need painting. He was oblivious to everything happening with Daniel or Amanda, blissfully unaware of their unraveling world, his mind occupied only with the important match tomorrow. Amanda pressed her palms against her temples.
They're pulling him in. I can feel it. I just need to keep him here a little longer. Just a little longer.
But she knew the truth. Ron had moved too soon. The fracture was opening, and she was running out of time. She looked toward the dark hallway, toward James's steady snoring, and for a moment she wished she could wake him, tell him everything, ask for help. But she didn't. She couldn't. She was alone in this, and Daniel was slipping away. Daniel stood frozen on the sidewalk, Eric beside him, Ron farther down the street, still silent, watching. Behind them, the figures remained in formation, unmoving, patient, aligned toward him. The night felt stretched thin, as if the air itself were waiting. Daniel took a step back, then another.
I can't go back in there. Then don't. Stay here. Stay with me.
But Daniel wasn't listening. Something behind him, behind all of them, began to vibrate. A low hum, barely audible, but felt in the bones. Daniel turned. The air beside the building split open, a vertical fracture, thin as a blade of light. The symbol pulsed within it, alive, calling. Daniel stepped toward it, as if pulled by a thread tied around his ribs.
Daniel, stop!
Daniel didn't stop. He couldn't. The fracture widened, light spilling onto the pavement. Ron didn't move. He didn't need to. Daniel raised a hand toward the light.
What's happening to me?
The fracture pulsed again, as if waiting for him, as if answering. And the night held its breath. Daniel woke up late this morning, later than he ever did. The light through the curtains was soft, ordinary. Nothing flickered, nothing hummed, nothing split. For a moment he wondered if everything had been a dream. Then he sat up, and the heaviness in his chest told him it wasn't. He walked to the living room, slowly, as if to check whether the world was still intact. Eric sat on the sofa, with tired eyes and arms crossed.
You're awake? Yeah.
Daniel rubbed his face. His hands trembled. He didn't want Eric to see.
You were talking in your sleep. A lot.
Daniel swallowed.
I did?
He didn't remember, and that frightened him more than the dreams themselves. Inside his head, a whisper. Please, just give me one normal day. One. They walked toward the cafe. Daniel tried to match Eric's pace, tried to look normal, tried to breathe normally. But the world felt thin, as if something pressed against the edges of reality, waiting. Daniel shook his head, trying to clear the sensation. They needed breakfast, something ordinary, something grounding.
Surely things will feel better with some food in your system. Joanne's down the street has the best egg and bacon toasties in the entire city. No demon of any kind stands a chance against those.
Daniel managed a weak smile. Eric's optimism was clumsy, but sincere. They sat down with 2 large cups of black coffee and the toasties. The warmth, the smell, the normality. It almost worked. Then Daniel's phone buzzed. Daniel froze.
What is it?
Mark.
Just Mark. Just his manager. Just a normal message from a normal life. Daniel exhaled shakily. I can't lose this, he quietly told himself.
I should go talk to him. I had that customer meeting I never showed up to. He must be furious.
That actually sounds like a good idea.
Eric felt a flicker of relief. Daniel, focusing on work again, felt like a return to something solid, something real. But the relief didn't last. Eric couldn't quite convince himself that the last few days had been illusions. He knew what he had seen. And even though he believed people could be delusional, he trusted his own perception too much to dismiss it. Mark's office was exactly as Daniel remembered it. Cluttered, stressed, human. A place untouched by symbols or fractures. A place that belonged to the world Daniel used to live in just days or weeks ago. He didn't have a clear grasp of how much time actually had passed since his bike ride to work that morning. Mark looked up from his desk, eyes widening slightly.
Daniel, you look like hell, to be honest.
Daniel forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes.
I know. I'm sorry about the meeting. It's...
Stop. Just stop.
Mark wasn't angry anymore. He had a worried face, and that worried Daniel even more.
Sit down.
Daniel did.
Look, I don't know what's going on with you, but this isn't like you. Missing meetings, disappearing, not answering your phone. That's not the Daniel I know.
Daniel stared at the floor.
I'm trying. I really am.
Mark studied him for a brief moment.
I believe you. That's why I'm saying this. Take a few days, sort yourself out, come back when you're you, all right?
Daniel nodded. But inside, something twisted. Because in his head, he was wondering. What if he never get to come back? What if this is the last time he sit in this chair? The last time he see this room? The last time he is himself? Mark leaned forward, lowering his voice.
Daniel, if something's wrong, really wrong, you can tell me. You don't have to handle it alone.
Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to tell him. He wanted to say everything. But how do you explain something you don't understand yourself?
I just need some rest. That's all.
Then take it. And Daniel?
Daniel looked up.
Don't disappear again. You scared the hell out of me.
Daniel nodded, but the word echoed inside him, like a warning he couldn't obey. Amanda sat at the kitchen table, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. The house was quiet. Too quiet. She felt it. The pressure. The thinning of the air. The way time seemed to lean toward a single point. Her time. Daniel's time. She thought, it's close. Closer than ever. I can feel it in my bones. I thought I had more time. I thought I could prepare him. James hummed in the next room, sorting match programs, blissfully unaware of Amanda's troubles.
I should go down to the pub and have a word with the lads.
Amanda closed her eyes.
He has no idea. None of them do. And I can't tell them. I can't tell anyone. I just need to keep him here a little longer. Just a little longer.
Her breath shook. A truth rose in her. Quiet. Devastating.
I thought I'd be ready. It all looked so simple. A plan, a purpose, a path I thought I could walk. Years to prepare. And still I'm not. I'm not ready to lose him. I'm not ready to end.
She opened her eyes, wiped them quickly. She didn't know when it would happen, only that it would. Soon. It's late afternoon. Daniel and Eric sat on a bench in the park, takeaway coffees in hand. The sky was overcast, the air cool.
You think it's over?
Daniel stared at the ground.
I don't know. It feels quiet. Quiet is good.
Daniel shook his head, deep in thought.
Maybe.
Eric didn't know what to say. He wanted to help. He just didn't know how. Inside Daniel's chest, a faint vibration.
a pull. And he thought, it's coming back. I can feel it. Like a tide I can't stop. He rubbed his sternum. You okay? Yeah, just tired. Amanda stood at the window, watching the street. Her reflection looked older than she remembered, more fragile. Her phone buzzed. A message from Emma. Dinner tomorrow? Everyone's free. Would be lovely to have Daniel, too. Emma was Daniel's younger sister, bright, warm, and always trying a little too hard to make things look effortless. She had climbed into a world far more polished than the one she grew up in, a world she still wasn't entirely sure she belonged to. And somewhere along the way, she and Daniel had drifted apart. Not out of conflict, but out of distance. The kind that forms when two lives move in opposite directions. She cared for him deeply, even if she no longer knew how to reach him. Amanda stared at the message. A family dinner. One last moment of normality. One last night before everything ends. She typed back with trembling fingers. Yes, darling. That's a splendid idea. I'll make sure he comes. She set the phone down, pressed a hand to her chest.
I can't stop it. I can't save him. I can't save myself. But I can give him one more night, one more memory, one more moment where he's just...
She couldn't finish the line. Daniel and Eric had said goodnight and parted ways outside the station, each heading back to their own apartments. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed. The room was still and quiet. He looked at his hands, at the faint tremor he couldn't control. He tried to steady his breathing, but the unease inside him only deepened. What's happening to me? Why me? Why now? I just want my life back. I just want something normal. He pressed his palms against his eyes. Please, just stop. But the pulse beneath reality continued. Slow, steady, calling. Amanda stood on the pavement, about a quarter-mile from their house, coat pulled tight around her. She had walked here without thinking. Her body had taken her here like on autopilot. She hesitated, then dialed. Daniel answered on the second ring. Amanda?
Daniel, come home tomorrow. We're having dinner. All of us.
Daniel blinked. Dinner? Why? Amanda swallowed.
Because it's time.
Her voice cracked, just barely. Daniel didn't notice. A thought pressed through Amanda's mind, sharp, unbearable.
My last night with you. My last chance to hold you here. My last chance to be your mother.
She felt herself close to breaking, but she kept it hidden from Daniel. He hesitated.
Okay. Yeah, I'll come. Is it all right if I bring Eric? He knows Emma, and he's met Andrew before. Amanda froze, just for a heartbeat. A tiny, invisible fracture inside her. Eric. He was never meant to get this close, and she feared that his curiosity and care for Daniel would make everything harder. He was the one she needed far away from her son, the one who made everything unstable.
Yes, of course. Bring him.
She forced the words out, because she had no choice.
Good. Good.
She hung up, stood still for a long moment,
Amanda knew that tomorrow had to come, yet every fiber of her being wished it wouldn't. She even wished for a miracle, and immediately frowned at the thought. Better than anyone in this world, except Ron, she knew that miracles didn't exist. At the far end of the street, a figure stood beneath a street lamp, silent, watching. Amanda didn't look at it. She didn't need to. Dinner had gone on for far longer than anyone expected. James was in rare form, laughing, loud, cheerful, unstoppable. Emma laughed at all the right moments. Andrew nodded politely, contributing just enough to seem engaged. Eric held his own, warm and steady. Amanda smiled when she had to. Daniel stayed quiet, but not unusually so. Just Daniel. The round dining table, the same one they'd had since Daniel was a child, stood solid and unremarkable in the center of the room. Plates were cleared, dessert had been eaten. Now James poured whiskey for the men, sherry for the women, and declared the evening bloody perfect.
Now this is what I call a proper family night. Good food, good company, and no nonsense.
Daniel managed a small smile. He felt almost normal, almost safe. Emma leaned forward, glowing with social ease.
It's so nice to have everyone together again. Feels like forever.
Indeed. It's been refreshing.
Amanda's hand tightened around her glass. Eric noticed, but said nothing. James clapped his hands once, loudly.
Right then, let's talk politics.
Emma groaned softly. Andrew straightened, preparing to dodge. Daniel stared at his drink.
Brexit. Absolute disaster, that was. Worst decision this country ever made.
Well, it's a bit more nuanced than that, James. There are economic factors, international...
Rubbish. It's simple.
He stood up a little, energized by whiskey and righteous conviction.
We took a sword and hacked ourselves away from Europe.
He brought his hand down in a sharp, slicing gesture straight across the center of the round table. And that was the moment everything broke. Daniel's breath hitched. The table, the ordinary, familiar table, shifted. Not physically, not for anyone else, but for him. A thin line of light split across the wood exactly where James's hand had cut the air. The circle pulsed, with the line cutting straight through towards Daniel on the opposite side of the table. The symbol emerged, alive, glowing, opening. The table itself had become the symbol. Daniel's chair creaked as he leaned back, eyes wide.
No. No, no, no.
Daniel, look at me, not the table.
But he couldn't. The circle widened. The hum began, low, bone-deep, familiar. Emma noticed the tension.
Amanda, what's wrong? You look, I don't know, really stressed.
Everything's fine.
It wasn't. The symbol brightened. The fracture deepened. Daniel felt the pull. The same pull as 817, as the apartment, as the street.
Daniel, you're sweating. Are you feeling unwell?
What's gotten into the lad? Bit of politics never hurt anyone.
Daniel pushed back his chair, too fast, too loud, the legs scraping violently against the floor. The hum sharpened. The circle throbbed like a heartbeat.
I have to go.
Daniel, seriously? You can't just...
He's finally lost it. Completely.
Daniel didn't hear them. He was already moving, stumbling away from the table, from the circle, from the light only he could see. Amanda stood so quickly her chair toppled backward.
Daniel!
Eric hesitated, just for a heartbeat, then ran after him. The table stopped pulsing. The symbol faded. The room returned to normal. Emma stared, mortified. Andrew exhaled sharply, annoyed. James blinked in confusion, fork halfway to his mouth.
What in God's name was that about?
No one answered, because no one knew, except Amanda. And Daniel, already out the door, already running toward the fracture that waited for him in the night. The cold air hit Daniel like a slap. He stumbled down the steps, gripping the railing as if the world were tilting beneath him. The hum followed him. The pull tightened. The symbol burned behind his eyes.
I can't stop it. I can't stop it. I can't. Daniel, wait!
Eric caught up, grabbing Daniel's arm just as he reached the street. Daniel jerked away, not from Eric, but from the force pulling him forward.
Eric, don't touch me. You're shaking. What's happening?
Daniel opened his mouth to answer, but the world answered first. A low vibration rippled through the pavement, barely visible, barely real, but Daniel felt it like a hook in his spine. At the same time, in the dining room, Amanda stood frozen for a moment. Just a moment. Then she moved. She righted her chair, ignored Emma's questions, ignored Andrew's irritation, ignored James's confusion. She walked toward the door.
Amanda, where are you going?
Amanda paused, just long enough to lie.
To get my son.
And then she stepped outside, into the night, into the cold, into the fate she had been running from for years. An overwhelming panic tightened in her chest, a thought she couldn't hold back.
This is it. This is the night. I can feel it. I can feel the world thinning. Daniel, please hold on. Just a little longer. Just until I reach you.
Farther down the street, Daniel had broken into a run. He staggered to a stop, breathless. The hum grew louder. The air shimmered. Eric grabbed his shoulder.
Daniel, look at me. You're scaring me.
Daniel turned, eyes wide, pupils dilated, breath ragged.
It's happening again. I can't stop it. I can't.
A light flickered at the far end of the road, at the old town square, in front of the church. A vertical line, thin as a blade, bright as a star. The fracture. Amanda saw it the moment she stepped outside.
No, not yet. Please, not yet.
Daniel ran without knowing where he was going, but his body knew. His bones knew. The pull knew. It led him through narrow streets, past shuttered shops, past the old stone fountain, until he reached the old town square in front of the silent church at the heart of the town. Eric followed as best he could. Amanda understood instantly, and she started running too, as fast as her legs would carry her. The square was still, waiting. But he wasn't alone. They were already there. The figures, dozens of them, standing in perfect formation, facing him. And at the center, Ronald. Ron stood utterly still, eyes fixed on Daniel with a focus so intense it was almost inhuman. The air vibrated. The thin vertical line of lights split open in front of Daniel. The same blade of brightness he'd seen before, now widening, deepening, alive. The rift. As it deepened, the circle around it formed, and the symbol was complete. pulsing, calling, pulling. Daniel staggered toward it, breath ragged. For the first time since he sold candy in the old kiosk, Ron spoke to him.
You need but touching it. I can't stop. I can't stop. I can't.
Amanda's voice cut through the night.
Daniel!
Daniel turned, eyes wide, terrified. She ran across the square, faster than she'd moved in years. Her heart hammered, her lungs burned.
This is it. This is the moment. My last moment. My last breath. My last and final act.
She reached him just as Daniel lifted his hand toward the rift. Amanda grabbed his arm.
I'm here. I'm here, Daniel. I've got you.
And then the impossible happened. Eric, desperate, terrified, ran after Amanda, up to Daniel, reached out and grabbed his shoulder. 3 hands, 1 contact point, 1 moment, 1 uncalculated possibility. In the very last moment, Ron noticed Eric's presence.
No!
The rift reacted. The world exploded. A shock wave of light burst outward from the rift, rippling across the square, across the rooftops, across the entire town. Lightning struck every tall structure at once. The radio tower, the old mill chimney, the church spire. The church bell tower took the worst of it. A bolt of white fire slammed into the metal cross at its peak. The clock face lit up like a lantern. The gears inside glowed and fused together. And then the hands froze. 8:17. Forever. The clock would never move again. Daniel screamed, not in pain, but in resonance. His body glowed with the same light as the rift, his outline blurred. Amanda held on with all her strength.
Take me instead. Take my life. Take my breath. Take everything I am. Just let him live.
Eric held on too, not knowing what he was doing, not knowing what it meant, only knowing he couldn't let Daniel go.
Daniel, stay with me.
Ronald finally reacted.
No! Not him! Not now!
But it was too late. The rift surged. 3 energies collided. Daniel's embryonic force, Amanda's sacrificial push, Eric's human resonance. The rift couldn't parse it. It couldn't choose. So it tore. Daniel was pulled forward, not into the rift, but through it. His body collapsed on the ground on the town square. His consciousness stretched, twisted, scattered. In his mind, he reached for Amanda. He reached for Eric. He reached for himself. And then he was gone. Not to the conglomerate's destination, not to the unions, but somewhere else. Somewhere no one had planned for. Somewhere unknown. The light vanished. The rift snapped shut. The figures collapsed like puppets with cut strings. Ron staggered backward, eyes wide with something that looked almost like fear. Then all of them disappeared, like into thin air. And Amanda? Amanda fell to her knees. She was alive, breathing, shaking, alive.
No, this isn't right. I should be gone. I should be...
She looked at her hands. They were glowing faintly. Then the glow faded. Eric knelt beside her, trembling.
Amanda, where's Daniel? Where did he go?
Amanda couldn't hear his words. She collapsed. Everything turned dark and silent. All she could think,
It's over.